Right. I have myself, Annie Cathy, Adrian Beck, Andrew Torney, Brian West, Carrie Powers, Deshane Barnett, Deb Clark, Kyla Leonards, Lori Heyer, Melissa Fisher, Vincent Pavish, Violet Plummer, Jason Emery, Bart Morris, Claire, Martin Kitston, and MCAT. It looks like in 206 we have Commissioner Slotnick and Commissioner Vero. We have Chris Lounsbury, Allison France, Ann Hughes, and 2 other guests.
And Heidi West.
Heidi West?
Yeah, from Grant.
Erica Berglund. I'm also online too.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, is there any public comments on items not on the agenda? We don't see anyone? Okay, and we don't have the consent agenda, so Heidi West with our first item.
Thank you. I'm Heidi West from Grants and Community Programs, and I have the next 2 agenda items. So if we could retake them together.
We sure can.
All right. So these are just the final, I guess, authorizations related to the community development block grant housing stabilization application that we're putting in. And so the first one is just a certification that says that we are going to follow all applicable federal rules related to this
Good
program,
job,
which you need to sign off on. And then the second item is just authorizes us to actually submit the application on behalf of the county. So quick and easy, hopefully. And it should also be the last time I'm here about this grant until we're successful. So
Great. I'm happy to move. We make sure items 1 and 2 happen.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm so sorry, help me with your name again.
Jenny Zazo.
Right, okay. And Jenny Zazo is just one yes. Sorry.
Hello,
thank you.
everyone.
Oh,
Just from downstairs.
The long trek.
yeah.
No, we have our staff meeting today too. So sorry I'm late.
Okay, Adrian.
We're good.
We're good, thank you.
All right, good morning, commissioners. So if you'll recall, about a month and a half ago, I came to the commission and kind of talked through the process of updating our pre-disaster mitigation plan. They've since changed the name of that to a multi-jurisdictional local mitigation plan, but in essence, having a FEMA approved, a Federal Emergency Management Agency approved pre-disaster mitigation plan or local mitigation plan enables us to access mitigation grant funds. And if our plan is not updated every 5 years, we are in jeopardy of being ineligible for some of those grant opportunities. And so our plan expired in June. We have submitted an extenuating circumstance request to FEMA to allow us to continue to apply for grants while our update is in process. The state is also doing a regional update to include a lot of the counties. We've opted out of that in an effort to make sure that our plan is local and true to our values around mitigation and climate resiliency. And we also think that going it this route will enable us to move a little quicker than the state plan. And so we applied for hazard mitigation grant funding under the planning category for the disaster 4508, which was issued due to COVID. We have since been approved for that application. And so what you have before you are the obligating documents, similar to Heidi's documents. These tell us that we have to follow all federal rules as we spend down that money. But this has a match requirement. So the federal share is $30,000 and the county share is $10,000. This will enable us to hire a contractor that we will work directly with to do community outreach and stakeholder engagement to ensure that our plan gets updated accordingly.
Great, thank you.
I do remember this conversation about the state doing it or us doing it.
Yeah,
So
I was really pleased and impressed with how quickly the state was able to turn around the application and get FEMA approval for us to go it alone.
So great. Well, given that you're here, going it alone is really good. We want to acknowledge that. So I would request the board to authorize the chair to sign the obligating documents.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Go alone with Adrian.
Go it alone with Adrian, which is in no way going it alone.
Exactly.
We won't be going it alone. It really does take a huge group to update these plans, but we have a great community and we'll get a good plan as a result.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Deb.
Good morning. So the last few years, we had put in our budget to buy equipment for our engineering manager, project manager, Nate Guys. And he kept babying along the old equipment, and it was so old, it was using 3G and it wasn't working so great. So we got 3 quotes. I can't remember, one was from Trimble, Selby's, and I can't remember the other one. But the other 2 quotes were up in the 60,000s, and Selby's came through with $43,168.50 for the equipment. And even from the time we got the quote to when we finally went ahead and ordered it in May, it had gone up and they honored our quote. So we went ahead and got it. It took some time, but we got it in July. Nate's been using it and it is working fantastically. He's out doing projects with the road crew when they're paving, and he just said, you know, doing some calculations on the fly, this has been just wonderful. So we'd like to ask you guys to go ahead and approve so I can follow through and pay for it.
Well, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we should backward. Let's go back. I would move. We approve.
It took us years to get this done.
I would request the board authorize payment for this survey equipment and keep Nate on the job.
And keep Nate happy.
Keep Nate happy on the job.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you so much, Deb.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, DeShane.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm actually multitasking, so I'm at another meeting, but stepped up to do this. This is just an update on our Qualtrics contract. When we signed the contract, we accidentally included the original quote start date, which was all the way back in April. And it took, you know, we didn't get this on Anna's desk until May, and then it took June, July, and August for our attorneys and their attorneys to hammer everything out. So we just, on page 3, we just want to update those dates so that we're starting basically tomorrow. They said if this gets signed today, they will start us tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Okay.
We're not going backwards. And I would move that request the board approve the chair to initial by the date modifications on page 3.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
So Shane, now you can go back to only doing 3 things at once.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
See you soon, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, Jason Emery.
Good morning. So this is just a yearly renewal for our firewall maintenance. So this is all the devices at all of our various locations that keep us safe from the bad guys on the internet. So it'd be our head-end firewall here downtown, as well as a lot of our remote sites. So just something we renew yearly to keep them up to date, the antivirus protection, wildfire, all the fun, fancy things. So.
Yeah, we better keep that. I think we should maintain that.
I think it's pretty important, yeah.
Pretty important,
Keep that
okay.
firewall up. All right, I'm going to move that we approve Jason Emery to sign the High Points Networks quote.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thanks so much, Jason.
Thank you, Jason, for keeping on this.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Any correspondence? Discussion items? Wildfire update, Adrian?
Yeah, you bet. We continue to be in extreme fire danger, though, you know, initial attack resources are being very successful. We did have a lightning bust that came through over the weekend. Several new starts up in the Seeley Lake area, but all were found and have since had a response, and everything seems to be in order right now. I will mention that the Missoula County Fire Protection Association, which is comprised of not only all of our local fire districts, but also our land management agencies, will be meeting on Wednesday to discuss if stage 2 restrictions are appropriate. Based on the indices, our extreme fire danger, and no real relief in sight right now. As we look at the extended forecast, we're going to be in the high 90s, even hitting 100 possibly later this week. And so our restrictions and closures plan does call for us to go into stage 2 restrictions based on the conditions that we have on the ground. But we're continuing to see a lot of good success with initial attack, and resources are not too strained. So that's some of the conversation that's going on right now. If the decision is made to go to stage 2 restrictions, I will be coming to you with a proclamation to do such that would impose those stage 2 restrictions on private land within Missoula County. So stay tuned on that.
So on Wednesday, are you making a decision or having the discussion to
having the discussion on Wednesday? And typically what has been past practice is that it's a collaborative process, and we tend to just out of ease of communication and trying not to confuse the public. If one of those land management agencies or one of the fire districts really feels strongly about going into restrictions and the indices and conditions are there, we tend to go all together. It does take some administrative time for that process to actually go into effect. Everybody's got to do their orders, whether that's the Forest Service, the state, or the county in this case. But tomorrow will be just kind of that discussion and kind of weighing out the pros and cons and determining what our capacity is to support those restrictions. Obviously, whenever we impose a restriction, then there is an expectation that we will enforce it, and that does have a cost, not necessarily to the county, but to our fire districts, as well as our federal and state partners that have to respond to then every report of smoke, because nothing should be on fire.
Yeah. Are there stage 2s anywhere else in Western Montana?
Yeah, so Ravalli County went into stage 2 fire restrictions along with the Bitterroot National Forest earlier this week. And that was largely in response to, they have a couple fires that are on the landscape down in Ravalli County that are straining their resources a little bit, and they are actually a little bit drier than we are. So they're a little bit ahead of us as far as kind of the deteriorating conditions. But yeah, we'll just have to see kind of what the group feels is most appropriate, and then I'll come to you with a recommendation based on that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Adrian.
You bet.
Food Policy Advisory Board.
We here.
Yes,
We have
away.
Erica.
Yeah.
Jenny.
Do have a quick PowerPoint to pull up here. So hi everyone, Erica Berglund. I'm the current chair of the Missoula City County Food Policy Advisory Board. And Jenny, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes.
Everyone.
Sure. Jenny Zazo, also sitting on the Food Policy Advisory Board as the CFAC representative.
So thank you all for having us today. I just wanted to give kind of an annual update of what the Policy Advisory Board Food Policy Advisory Board has been up to. Jenny and John DeBari probably presented about a year ago, so it's been about a year. Just to remind you, I won't go through all this, but what our board is charged with, basically making policy recommendations on food access, the sustainability of our food system, the local food economy, etc., ensuring a vibrant local food system in Missoula City and County. And just to give you an overview of who, that's really small, who's kind of on our board. We do currently have a new vacancy, which is a county commission appointed vacancy. So wanted to let you know about that. And generally we have some folks represent.
Who stepped down?
Jessica Allred from the Missoula Food Bank.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're missing that emergency food perspective. So I think that's obviously very important to have that perspective on this board. We
I
also,
mean,
yeah, go ahead.
do you know if has the application?
I don't think, I
Process
think
begun?
I don't know that she's formally written.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know, it's in the
It just
process of,
happened.
It just
yeah, it
happened,
just
okay.
happened,
Thank
but you know, I think time-wise, I wanted to make sure this was on your radar. So generally, we have some perspective of land use and kind of food systems planning from a more larger scale. Jenny obviously has the CFAC perspective. And we have a couple of ranchers, and recently Rebecca Elderkin joined us, and she works at All Nations. And Jason Mondala from Garden City Harvest with the Farm to School program. So, and I did want to flag, we recently just had a board member survey and some other areas that our members identified as wanting some representation or kind of that buyer perspective, both for like institutional procurement, but also we don't really have a restaurant and wholesale buyer perspective on the board currently. So some other areas. And then I think additional, just more perspective of health and nutrition as well. So some of the internal things that we've been doing over the last year is some ongoing education of our local food system. We've had several folks join us to give kind of presentations and Q&A. And yeah, so kind of the economic perspective. And we had some folks from MCPS join us as well. And had our board members take the training with Dan Clark. So, and again, some more things that we've been working on internally is figuring out, kind of how our board works, functions, and gets, you know, moves from an idea to a recommendation. So we've been developing some work plans and some processes there. We, in the last year, created some subcommittees around land use, economic development, and then food access, health, and nutrition as kind of the three primary buckets of policy that we have identified as a board as being kind of our main focuses. Now what else? We had Chris join us for a meeting, which was really helpful in helping us understand in what realm our recommendations are useful to you as county commissioners and the county, understanding that it looks a little different than the city perspective. So, and yeah, we have a kind of a process for developing policy recommendations. We also, at this point, it was last fall, conducted a rapid community food assessment survey, which I will get into a little bit more, but we're planning to do that again this fall and help kind of get a pulse of what's going on in the community, what our community members are interested in and concerned about in regards to our food system. We made several comments on land use policy changes over the last year. And then, of course, we helped submit the local food promotion program grant proposal through the county. And yeah, so just to give a little bit more background about this survey that we put out last fall, we had 375 folks from Missoula County respond, mostly from within the city, but you know, this was an online only, kind of our first attempt at doing this survey, and we've identified this as a useful tool to understand what our community is interested in and wants us to focus on. So this year we hope to kind of broaden our outreach effort and get that out a little more widely. And so we ask questions about food consumption patterns, where people buy their food in Missoula, kind of the most significant issues and challenges within our food system that they see, and what kind of changes they would like to see going forward. And just very quickly, hard to see here, but these were topics that were mentioned across the survey, and the areas in yellow were kind of the most frequently discussed areas. Food access to and healthy, nutritious food. Healthy, nutritious food in schools came up, which I know is a little outside of the purview of the city county, but land use was also another concern, and preserving our viable farmland in the county, expanding urban agriculture, just seeing more local food in restaurants and grocery stores, waste reduction, and then several folks also mentioned wanting to see more effort around education and outreach on health and nutrition. And then, as you all are well aware, the county submitted a proposal for the Local Food Promotion Program grant, which I and other folks from the board helped kind of create that narrative. And it was for a feasibility study for additional local meat processing infrastructure in the county. We've been talking about meat processing infrastructure for a while now on the Food Policy Advisory Board, and have identified this as an important area and kind of a gap or bottleneck within, as we have all heard about recently, also with COVID, has exacerbated these impacts, but also understanding that a lot goes into having a viable meat processing facility, and so wanting to understand kind of the cost benefit analysis there. So I believe we're still waiting to hear back about that, but
Is this a mobile facility or?
it would kind of look at a couple different options would be the idea. So really the feasibility of maybe a few different options.
Could just
Yeah.
go up on this a little bit, kind of just for an FYI, sort of at the heart of this problem. In Missoula County, we raise a whole bunch of cows and calves, and then we send the calves off to feedlots in other parts of the state or also other parts of the West and Midwest. And then we import beef. And when we import beef, we are paying for all the value that's been added, the feeding and carrying and transporting to get a calf to a size of to a beef. And we could hold on to a lot of that money and cut down on costs and get more money back to ranchers if we could do that processing right here. There's this nut of an issue in that you can do this on a small, somewhat artisanal scale, totally within the law, or you can go really big.
But we don't
with
have the
USDA.
mid-size.
The mid-sizes, and it's super difficult because capitalizing such a thing is a fantastically large task, and trying to figure out a path from where we are now to where we need to get to is really a huge puzzle. So the essence of this grant is to basically hire someone who has this expertise, who could figure out any number of solutions. What we need is a mobile thing. Oh, maybe what we need is to come up with some new technology for the existing artisanal folks to jump up a notch. Oh, maybe what we need to do is build a thing and import, bring in a USDA inspector who's going to work right on site. We don't know what the answer is. We just kind of have a sense of what the puzzle is. So this grant is to figure out what the answer is, not to implement it. That would be way more than $25,000. But this is just to take the next step.
Yeah, and this particular grant seemed really appropriate and a good time for us to kind of seize this opportunity, because it is specific focus on expanding regional food systems, and has a they particularly mentioned food policy groups as an entity to be a part of this, and local government. So it kind of checked a lot of boxes there. So waiting to hear back.
When do you expect to hear back?
Unclear. I
Is it
think the
like
actual
years,
award,
or-
no, I think the award period starts this fall, so I would imagine it's imminent. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll turn it over to Jenny to talk about some of the land use recommendations and comments we've been making over the last year.
Sure. I would have to say, I think the board has been pretty focused on land use just because of everything that's been happening in the county. And so what we were focusing on in 2022 and kind of wrapping up right now is, and the mechanism we've used in the past is a letter of policy recommendation or a recommendation in support of some of these things. And I'd like to after I'm done with my summary, kind of talk about how that could become a little bit more effective and how we're meeting maybe more so in person about these things to kind of have a more dynamic conversation. So we submitted a letter in support of the Mullen-Build Area Master Plan. We were able to have multiple touch points with the CAP staff on the plan to be able to provide the board's input, which was then reflected in some of the comments, and then a letter of recommendation to move forward with the final plan was submitted. A similar thing happened with the Missoula County zoning update. We had multiple touch points with CAP staff to provide input into the zoning draft and kind of have some questions back and forth. You know, how would this affect a farmer and rancher in this scenario, and kind of work through some of those things. And we're really grateful for that opportunity. And then at the end, submitted a letter of recommendation for the final zoning update to be put into code or adopted.
What does MARP stand for?
It's the Montana Agriculture. It's like it's the ARPA funds that were designated for agricultural use for the state of Montana.
Got it, thanks.
And they called it MARP, but I can't remember
Okay,
the acronym right now.
good enough, thank you.
We also submitted a letter of recommendation for the use of these funds to improve food access and agricultural strength in Missoula County at that time. And so all of these, like I said before, were submitted as letters of recommendation. I do think that we'd like to understand more touch points that we could have other than just submitting a letter. And we have talked a little bit about that, I think, when you came to do the presentation, other mechanisms or ways in which we could work together and kind of hear from you all what we should be working on, what you're hearing from your constituents, and how we can move forward and expand our list of items that we're working on too. So if we go to the next slide. So our future focus right now, things that we've already started to talk about, is the city zoning update will also be coming up soon. And so we'll be providing feedback and recommendations there. Let's see, the Missoula County zoning update is already done. I'm not sure why it's on the slide. Small ag land conservation. And so just yesterday, the full Food Policy Advisory Board heard from Keely on the CAP staff about a new in-planning process idea around the county's role in protecting small agricultural parcels. We will submit a formal letter of support to move forward with that idea. It's definitely still in the ideation phase and working with multiple partners on using conservation servitudes in order to protect.
And maybe a new name, instead of conservation services.
Definitely.
Oh, okay, good.
Definitely a new name.
What do you think of like agricultural reserve program?
Right, but then we were, yeah. But then we were
Yeah.
worried that people might, think APR and then get all twitchy. So, but anyways,
Yes.
don't mean to derail it. I'm really excited.
I think we'll be okay because we're on this side.
Oh, okay.
I think being on this side of the mountains,
Okay.
most people here don't even know. Now it's AP. So
Oh,
now
oh,
they get,
okay.
now they get mixed up.
Advanced placement, okay.
No, actually, they get mixed up with Reuters and they want the
Yeah.
in England, and the whole thing is called.
We'll be following this very closely and providing our letters of support and recommendation for this process to continue moving forward. Really excited to hear that bond funds can be used for this tool and the partners that will be involved to provide capacity.
Exciting.
Just being at that meeting yesterday, it's such a great leap forward that this is happening and these
Yeah.
conversations are happening.
Yeah,
Really wonderful development.
So awesome.
been the years in the making.
Yeah, very exciting. And I think one thing unique to our city county food policy advisory board is we would love to kind of keep the city looped in on this conversation as well, and kind of understanding our unique role in that, kind of straddling both of those realms. So but very exciting.
Okay, what is this photo of?
Oh, I don't know. It's from a
Do you know what those are?
PowerPoint.
It's like a shelter belt.
It's like mustard and what is that?
Canola, maybe on the
Oh.
left, which is a mustard. It's in the Nebraska family.
Okay, and I was thinking that this was somewhere here and I was,
I
like,
tricked.
where is that?
Yeah. Just some stock photos.
Okay.
Which I was like, I don't know if I want to put this one in there, but.
Could very well be.
We also watch and communicate about what is happening at the state legislature. We had bills come through at the last session that directly impact zoning, conservation easements, and things like that. And so we're constantly looking when it comes to the land use subcommittee at things that would affect Missoula County and the ability to protect agricultural land. We haven't unlocked the best way to sort of move forward as a board to work with electeds on how we can influence at the state legislature level, but it is something that we're thinking about and talking about. Recently Gianforte put together the housing task force, which is looking at all parts of the law that would impede development. And so we are kind of just watching to see how that would come through and trying to learn who in Missoula County. I think there's somebody who's sitting on that task force right now and just trying to understand what the outcomes of that may be and communicate that. I think that's it for now.
So some of our next steps is we're continuing to kind of flesh out our structure in terms of how we get things done legally in terms of the open meeting regulations in between our monthly meetings and kind of figuring out some of the key ways that we can really make the most out of our recommendations, both at the city and county level. And then externally, again, we are planning to do a rapid community food assessment survey this fall. And I forgot to mention, we are also working on securing an internship. So we have some committed funds from the city and county to fund a student intern from the University of Montana. We're working with the climate change studies and environmental studies program there. Unfortunately, the timeline is a little tight with the fall semester, but we do have some interest there. So hoping that we can increase our capacity this fall, and which specifically to help with that survey and also increase our community engagement and outreach efforts. And then some of the specific policy areas that we'd like to focus on in the next year is that farmland protection, specifically, small parcels, just kind of committing the city and county to the importance of local food for our community, and then strengthening access to and support for local food. I think that was a little redundant there, but yeah, I think that's about sums up what we've been up to the last year. So thanks, everyone.
Do you work with Ravalli County at all? Or, because I'm thinking of producers down there, or is there a?
Missoula City County Food Policy Board.
Okay, there's no conversation.
I mean, I'm just going to, I can't help it, I'm sorry. If we get this grant,
Yeah,
I think we would definitely be engaging with folks there because it would be a regional meat processing, but all the stuff these guys have been doing has really been awesome.
okay.
And we have kind of to that point, we have had some discussion with other communities of some discussion as a board, how we want to engage with other communities, especially thinking of, looking towards the legislative session and understanding that we're probably stronger together. But Jenny, you might want to speak to kind of your conversations with the folks over in Bozeman and kind of where the rest of the state is at with food policy at a local level.
Yeah, we went and sat in on a conservation and policy roundtable group. One of the Gallatin County Commissioners was there as well, and other like land trust representatives and people working across the food system there, specifically in conservation or policy work. And everyone's really looking to Missoula. And so for us, it's what we are finding in other communities across the state is that we're really leading the charge. There isn't any food policy advisory boards anywhere else at this time. People would like to replicate what we're doing and are kind of looking to the strides we've made in zoning and in other areas. And so that's sort of the theme of out there. And
Right.
Yeah, she gets
Yeah,
that for
there we
sure.
go.
With the spirit, again.
An experience.
Just, because I'm in on this, I want to give these guys big pats on the back.
Ah,
They're
yes.
inventing this.
Yes.
Like, this had never existed before. There wasn't a paradigm. So, and they really put a ton of time into, as Erica showed in the first part of her presentation, into getting everybody up to speed on in terms of education and bringing all these speakers in from across the spectrum of folks who are involved in food and ag. Really did a great job of kind of lifting everybody up and then being methodical and creating working groups and doing surveys, charting a plan forward. So I feel like they've done a super great job.
Thank you so much.
I'd love to hear other ways in which the board could be most helpful.
I just appreciate, this is like the first time we've had like a little, check-in with you
Yeah.
guys. So this
Yeah.
has been so awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think that is definitely a hope, is that we have these slightly more frequently. And as Jenny said, maybe increasing our presence, board presence at regular meetings, just to be there for questions or comments. So.
And
One-
especially when we're gonna submit, one of
Yes.
those,
Yeah.
on some of the bigger issues, maybe beforehand to become, or say we're submitting this letter, we'd really like to also verbally have a chance to present around what we're submitting. So that can be paired and a little bit more strong.
Great. And Martin's on. You should have a meeting with Martin.
Good presentation, thanks.
And Bart's.
Yeah, Bart and who's Claire?
Claire, she's our vice chair, and
Okay.
she was planning to be here today, but she is under the weather.
Sure. if
Okay.
Bart or Claire have anything else to add, but they're also our food policy advisory board members.
Great. Well, thank you all, and thank you, for your great work. Exciting.
Thanks a ton for coming by.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Events, invitations? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.